Hello, my name is Julie, and today I am going to be reacting to the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees for fantasy, reading 3 of them, and then voting for them. Second year in a row I have done this. If you missed one of my last videos, I did a prediction of the 20 books that I thought were going to be nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy. My goal this year was to get, I think I said 13. I wanted to get 13 right. Last year I got 16 right out of a total of 20, and I was massively impressed with myself. This year I was less confident, and so I wanted to get 13. If you want to see my predictions and my stats around all the books that I looked into, you should definitely go watch that video and come back here and you can get the full journey of me this year. But in this video, I am going to react to the Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy, and I'm going to look through a lot of the other genres, see if anything really surprised me, if there's anything that I really like on those lists, but I haven't read a lot of 2025 releases outside of fantasy. I'm going to give you a lot of stats about the books that were nominated, see if there's anything that I'm really surprised about, see which of these books are a little bit more of editors' picks rather than doing the numbers. And then I'm going to read 3 of the books. I think I know what I'm going to be reading physically, but I do not know what I'm going to be reading on audiobook at all. So let's just get started with finding out who was nominated. Okay, it is finally time for me to find out what was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I am so unbelievably nervous, just like I was last year. And this time I have gotten just as much sleep as last year, because last year I had to wake myself early from work and I was terrible. And now I was not allowed to sleep very much last night. And you'll find out why later. The only thing I have been told is that my friend Katie DM'd me and she said, I have never been more disappointed in the Goodreads Choice Awards. So I have no idea what is going to happen. I think if anything that I got wrong is going to be on here, I think Empire of the Dawn actually might have been the better book to go with. I think maybe going with both of them would have been a better idea, but both that and Among the Burning Flowers, I don't know. I have no idea. And I feel like there is a good chance that there has been a change in the Goodreads Choice Awards because they did not put anything out about it ahead of time. When I tell you I'm terrified, my chest hurts. Oh my God, okay. So I can see from the thumbnail 3 books. A Drop of Corruption, The Everlasting, and Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. And all 3 of those are on my list. I'm actually going to zoom in. Oh, and nominees on your shelves, Hemlock and Silver. That's 4 that I have correct. Okay. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, book gods. The Strength of the Few is the first thing that came up. And let me tell you, all 4 of these books right here, I have nominated. Okay. The Strength of the Few by James Islington just came out today. It is my most anticipated book of the year. I am so excited. I literally just ordered it 10 minutes before this video. Strength of the Few. That's correct. And I am going to be reading that book in this video. Next up, we have Brigands and Bread Knives, which also came out today. I am not planning on reading this for this video, but I'm going to read it eventually. I have liked the other 2 books in the series. Can you hear my breath shaking? Next up, we have A Drop of Corruption. The first book in the series was in last year's awards, and for my research into BookTube, this was last year's best fantasy book release of 2024. So I think that this series will only have gotten more fans. I think it'll do even better. That tends to be how sequels do. A Drop of Corruption, I have already read, and I gave that like a 4.25. I thought it was a massive upgrade from book 1. Book 1, I just didn't feel like the mystery worked, and I thought the mystery worked in this one really well. Last year, I ended up having to vote for it in the final, even though I only gave it like a 3-star. Then The River Has Roots by Amel Almotar. That was again in my top 10-ish books. It's like the number 10 most read. It's by an author who was established in the Goodreads Choice Awards before. The River Has Roots, I really enjoyed. I have to say, if you want a short book, if you love fairy tale-like books, I don't like novellas, and I think that this is the perfect length, particularly if you can get your hands on the audiobook. It's fantastic. I think I gave that a 4.25 as well. I don't know what my count is now because we saw other ones, but that means I have 4 correct. Please no Empire of the Dawn. Every single one of these I have correct. Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher, as my friend Beck said, is a frequent flyer of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I love using that phrase. She is nominated everywhere. I'm currently reading her horror release that I'm sure is going to be in the awards right now. But this is a Snow Way retelling, and retellings do get nominated quite a bit. We have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, which I am going to be reading in this video. I'm very excited. This is the second most popular 2025 release and the third most read overall book that will be nominated in the awards. And it's about two PhD students who are going to save their professor from hell. Then we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, which I have already read. This was a 4-star for me. Win in Truth by Brandon Sanderson is the 5th and final in this arc of the Stormlight Archive. I think I read this in February. I think it's undoubtedly the worst book in the series so far. I don't think there's a lot of disagreement on that. I still think it's a good conclusion. I have to go check after this. According to my calculations, Barrier Bones and the Midnight Soil should have surpassed it about today in number of readers. It says 119,000. When we get to Barrier Bones, I'll check and we'll see if it has surpassed it. It's gonna do well. Oh my god, okay. Nervous. Oh my god. Okay, The Incandescent. That's the first one that I got wrong. So when I did my 20 books, I actually filmed me talking about 22 or 23 books and I just cut out ones later. And The Incandescent was one of the books I didn't have quite as much justification to pick it as the other books. She's been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards before. I'm not super surprised to see her here. This was a last minute one that I took off my list. So I'm actually happy to see it there because I'm interested in it and it was on my list for a long time. A Resistance of Witches by Morgan Ryan was on my list. So if you're counting now, out of 12, I only have one wrong. I've already gotten 11 correct. So Resistance of Witches is a historical fantasy that is about a group of witches who are trying to keep magic out of the hands of the Nazis, which seems really interesting to me. That is one that I'd be really interested to read for this video. I haven't decided what my audiobook of the video is going to be, and that might come down to me sampling the audiobooks and which one sounds the best in terms of like audio quality after I pick which ones I'm most interested in. Barrier Bones and the Midnight Soil, I have already read. I gave this like a 4.25, 4.5, and it is about lesbian vampires over centuries and all of these different points of view coming together. I think it's a really good portrayal of like cycles of power and trauma. Barrier Bones has 114,000 reviews, so Win in Truth is still the most read book of the year. Then we have Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. I am so proud that I put this in fantasy and not fantasy romance because all of the marketing for this book was not talking about the romance at all, despite her previous releases. I'm not super interested in this one myself, but like I'm happy I got it right. Okay, next one's... Oh, really? What? Wow. Disappointed, confused, happily wrong. The Society of Unknowable Objects by Gareth Brown makes me really disappointed this is on here. So Gareth Brown had his debut novel last year with The Book of Doors, and that did really well last year. And then Goodreads has not been pushing The Society of Unknowable Objects at all. It came out a couple months ago and like nobody's fucking read it. Nobody's talking about this book. It does not have the readership. It does not have the reviews. It's a 3.91. Like I still don't think that I think that is maybe a little bit higher than The Book of Doors had, but Book of Doors was one of the biggest fantasy books of last year. I'm so disappointed to see that on there. The Raven Scholar, really glad I got that right. So that is one of my favorite books that I've read this year. Of the books that I have read so far, I think it's going to be my vote. I think this is an awesome debut fantasy that is really unique, really well crafted, just so engaging. It's a promising opening to a series. King's Sorrow, I'm really confused to see here because I was under the impression that it was a horror book and its number one genre on Goodreads is horror. It was on my list. I was looking at it, but I had eliminated it because it was another genre. So that's really weird. It's not often that you see a book get nominated for not its first genre. Really weird. I mean, I'm not gonna read it, but whatever. And Red City by Marie Lu, I'm very happy to see there. That was a book that I really wanted to put on my list because I was personally excited for it. I love to read it. Honestly, that might be one I read for this video, except it's the first book in a series and I really shouldn't do that to myself. I just didn't think it had enough people interested in it. Okay. Wow, okay. So I think I did one worse than last year. So we broke our fucking sequel rule again. Goodreads, what are we doing? The Sirens by Amelia Hart, I had on my list. It was being marketed more as fantasy than historical fiction, unlike Wayward. It's about two pairs of sisters and they somehow come into contact with mermaids. Maybe one of them becomes mermaids, I don't know. Thief of Night is the second book in a series and the previous book in the series was not nominated. So of course I didn't put it on there. So now I'm really glad I didn't put Empire of the Dawn on here. Water Moon was on my list. I didn't care for it. It was like 3 stars. And The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow, which was a last minute addition to my list. Alex C. Harrow has never not been nominated for the Fantasy Awards, if I'm not wrong. What the fuck is King Sorrow doing here? Maybe Goodreads users are pigeonholing Joe Hill into the horror genre, kind of like they do with Stephen King, because that's his son. There's 3 books that I was wrong about that I'm genuinely disappointed to see on the list, and 2 that I'm actually pretty excited were. So that means I got 15 right. Last year I got 16. This year I was less confident, so I'm fine. Society of Unknowable Objects, I don't think it had any of the numbers going for it. It feels like it's favoritism towards an author a little bit. King Sorrow, I don't know who gets to pick what genres things go into. Thief of Night, that is the sequel rule. So now this is 2 years in a row in which they have broken that rule with one singular book. Let's also tally up how many sequels are on the list, because in the past 3 years, except for last year, it was 5 books, and before that it was 4. So now we have Thief of Night, Strength of the Few, Brigands and Bread Knives, Drop of Corruption, Win in Truth. Exactly 5. So I was right about that. Really quickly, I'm going to look at the other categories and just give you very quick thoughts, because I don't really care about the other categories. I'd be interested to see for fiction, just because I'm not caught up on it. My Friends, I own. Wild Dark Shore, I'm interested in, even though I have previously hated a Charlotte McConaughey and nobody agrees with me. Sonia and Sunny just won, was that the Booker Prize? That just won a big award. Heart the Lover has been everywhere. Cursed Daughters just came out, like, I think this week. Really cool to see that one on there. The Girls Who Grew Big, not surprised. I've seen that everywhere. The Emperor of Gladness, really happy to see that on there. I want to read it. Like 6-ish of these books I've not heard of. I would like to read The Emperor of Gladness and Cursed Daughters. Let's see. Historical fiction, great. It's gonna be a bunch of books I don't know anything about. Bright Years, I have seen. The Lilac People, I have seen. Oh, Good Dirt, I own. I would like to read that. The Amalfi Curse got put in historical fiction. Its #1 genre is fantasy. That's the 2nd time they've done that. Oh, I was gonna say this before. It is the number of people who shelve it that's how those taggings happen. But I think that there must be some sort of conversation with the publisher of like, hey, you could be qualified. What do you want to put forward as the genre? And I think maybe the team behind the book should have a little bit more say in what the genres that pop up are. Maybe there should be a like from the publisher tags and tags from the reader, because sometimes the publisher gets it wrong, but sometimes the audience gets it wrong because they haven't read the book yet and they're tagging it ahead of time. I've heard of Junie, Atmosphere, and Isola, and I know of Kristen Harmel. Have I read a Kristen Harmel before? Let's see, mystery thriller, Not Quite Dead Yet, I really want to read. You Killed Me First, I'm a bit interested in. Famous Last Words, I think was massively disappointed. Happy to see S.A. Cosby on the list. I want to read more of his books. Richard Osman, my boy, he's on the list. Let's go. Nobody's surprised though. Harlan Coben, Alice Feeney, Lisa Jewell, Frida McFadden, Julie Clark, Frida McFadden again. Really not surprising. I'm happy to see Julie Clark on there, actually, just because she's a Julie. I've read one of her books before. I have not been tuned into mystery thrillers lately. Thrillers have not been working for me lately, so maybe I'll find something new to read in there. Romance, let's see. Is there anything surprising? All I care about is Promise Me Sunshine being on this list. I don't care about anything else. Are you kidding me? Promise Me Sunshine didn't make the list. Genuinely super disappointing, because that is, from my side of the internet, one of the romances of the year. That's really massively disappointing. Romantasy, I was right about Immortal, which is Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I am reading this month. Don't care about the rest of them. Oh my god! I didn't even notice that Emily Wilde wasn't in the fantasy category. Emily Wilde got moved. Okay, now I need to look at which books that I put on there. Among the Burning Flowers, that was one I got wrong. Aftertaste was one I got wrong. Blackwood's Blue Sky was one I got wrong. I don't think it was even nominated. River Has Roots, Raven Scholar, Amalfi Curse was in a different category. Emily Wilde's Compendium of Fairies was in a different category. Those are the 5 I got wrong. I'm not surprised I got Among the Burning Flowers wrong. Aftertaste was one that I kind of hung around with, not for great reason. Blackwood's Blue Sky, I'm surprised to not see on there, honestly. Emily Wilde, I cannot believe that they moved categories. What are you doing? Let's move over to sci-fi. Oh, These Memories Do Not Belong to Us. I've actually been interested in reading. The Dream Hotel I've been interested in reading. Local Heavens, that's a sci-fi? Death of the Author I was really excited to vote for until the author did some messed up stuff on the internet. I'm not Surprised to see Yumi Kitase on here. The Compound, I'm interested in reading. I wasn't sure if that was going to be sci-fi or horror, honestly. Automatic Noodle, I enjoyed. I'm not going to have a chance to read any of the other ones of these, so I'll happily vote for Automatic Noodle. I'd love to see Annalie Newitt's on here because they do not get enough recognition. I didn't know the Book of Lost Hours was... Hold the phone. There's no way that's supposed to be sci-fi first. Historical fiction first. What is happening? Let's see horror. Please have Chuck Tingle on there. That's what I want. We Love You, Bunny, for sure. Yeah. All of these, honestly, that's a pretty exciting horror category, and there's a good amount that I'm interested in. I really want to read Alba Diaz. I want to read Bat Eater. I want to read Lucky Day. I'd love to try out Nat Cassidy for once, and I own a Ling Ling Huang, so I'm not going to be reading that one next, but I'd like to. A lot of authors I'd like to read. What about debut novel? Resistance of Witches. When the Tides Held the Moon didn't make it to fantasy romance. Aftertaste, hey, Aftertaste made it to debut, so at least, like, I flagged that book. Witch's Orchard was also on my list. I mean, Alchemize is gonna win by a fucking landslide. Why'd you put that in there? I would argue it's not really a debut. I want to see nonfiction. Can I just put in my vote for Everything is Tuberculosis already? One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This was also good. I'm interested in Is a River Alive? But I'm literally just going to vote for Everything is Tuberculosis in front of you because it needs to be... I'm also really interested in Girl on Girl. And Shitification, I'm also interested in. Careless People was good, not super duper fantastic. 30 minutes have gone by, and those are my thoughts. Those are my initial reactions. Absolutely fucking shocked by some of these genre choices. They must have had conversations with the publishers this year that they did not have last year. That was my argument last year, is I was like, wait, The Enchanted Greenhouse wasn't nominated in Romantasy, was it? Okay, now I'm pissed. Fantasy Awards, I did very well. Other things we're pissed about. Okay. So let's get into reading our first book, which is going to be Catabasis. Hello. It is that time of year when you sure don't get a whole lot of sunlight during the day. And I already kind of had this setup going, so we're updating here. I'm reading the large print edition. It's what my library had available, so it's what I grabbed. And let me tell you, large print, no kidding. I am very, very lucky. A lot of my family has bad vision, and I do have to have glasses for seeing far away, but I was at my most recent appointment told that I have perfect readers, so it's great. So this book is 770 pages long, and the actual book is 560. To read 100 pages, I have to read 138 pages in the book, and I have not had that problem when I have been not looking at my phone. I have really had to be using Focus Friend because I have had a lot of stressors in my life. Like, there's a lot of stressors happening in the wide world right now, but I'm also having stressors in my personal life that I'm like, okay. Yay. I love having all these things on top of each other. Part of it is just like, I'm planning the trip that I'm going on in a couple of days. Like, things are having to move around, and I am not a flexible person. I don't like moving plans around. Starting off with Catabasis. This is about Alice Law, who in the 1980s is a student at Cambridge, which was nobody gonna tell me this was set in the 80s? Like, I had to Google that. This is set in a world where magic is a common enough occupation. It does feel like Babel in the way that magic is sort of included in the real world, but it is a different magic system and everything. It is not connected to Babel in any way. Like, I think some of us expected that it might be a shared universe before anything was said about it. The magic here has to do with hell and pentagrams and lengthy spell casting and stuff like that. Our main character is a grad student doing magic, and her advisor slash professor, she believes she caused him to get killed in a magical accident. In order for her to be able to graduate, she needs to have him there. So she decides that she is going to go into hell to find him. And it turns out that the other guy who is in the same position as her, his name is Peter, figures out what she is doing and has also been doing the same research because he wants to do the same thing. And begrudgingly on her side, they end up going to hell together. They're using all of these sources that people have of what hell was like. They're using Dante's Inferno. They're using the stories of Orpheus. They're using all of these different mythologies, versions of hell, to try to guide their way through and go through the layers of hell to find their professor. And we also establish very quickly that there is a at least semi-romantic past between Alice and Peter that they have, and they've been more cold to each other, but now that they're on this adventure together, it's sort of coming to a head. I had forgot that a comment that people had made about this book was that it was a little bit heavier on the romance. None of her other books have really had a romance nuance in it. So off the bat, I just find R.F. Kuang's writing to be so readable no matter what it is in. Like it's been a long time since I read The Poppy War, so I can't exactly say it for that. But Babel, Yellowface, and Catabasis, when I'm locked in, I am locked in. I am sucked into her writing. I do think what's kind of strange about this novel is how quickly we are dropped in. Literally, chapter 2, they're in hell. We're getting like backstory type stuff, but it definitely felt odd to me that we did not have more establishing stuff up front. And it makes me think like, oh, she's going to want to cover a lot of ground if this is 560 pages with no preamble, or if there's more that she wants to reveal over the course of the book. I'm feeling good. I'm not feeling immediately fantastic like I did about Babel and Yellowface. But I will say this is a little bit more comedic than I thought it was going to be. It's not full serious like Babel is. It's not full satire like Yellowface is. It's serious with bits of humor here and there, and I do think R.F. Kuang has a very similar sense of humor to me, so we get along pretty well. I occasionally turn on this like Stephen Fry, like British older man voice when doing the narration here, because I think just a lot of it, you can tell that R.F. Kuang has lived in England for a long time because it feels so British the way that this is written, just kind of the tongue-in-cheek narration. Also, I'd like to say, am I the unpopular opinion saying I don't like this cover? I like the British cover better. I don't think either of them are great. I think it definitely portrays the book accurately. I just don't, like, I know it's supposed to be MC Escher and off-putting. Is it the color combination? I don't know what it is. I don't like this cover. Some people are saying it's too academic. Some people are saying it's not academic enough. Some people were saying, oh, it goes too far. Some people saying it doesn't go far enough. Some people are saying that there's too much romance in this book. Some people are saying there's not enough romance in this book. Like, every critique I've heard of the book, I feel like I've also heard the opposite. So like, it's going to be weird to find what kind of reader this book is for. And I definitely have felt like in the first, 100 pages of the normal book, I have not found that I was really lost by any of the references that was made. I would just love that like on like page 2 or something like that, we get a Lord of the Rings reference right off the bat. I was like, yes, let's go. When I was so worried that it was going to be all this philosophy stuff that I can't handle. But honestly, some of the connections that are being made in this book, I am getting because I've watched The Good Place. So honestly, I feel like if you watch The Good Place and you liked how that incorporated like real life philosophy, this might be a book to read. It doesn't have the same tone. It's not as comedic, but like it really made me think of that time in my life when I was watching it. I actually started rewatching it lately and then had to put it down because I've been watching too many things. I like to say, is anybody on this planet watching the Celebrity Traders UK? Because I'm obsessed. The finale is in like 2 days and I will be on vacation when it happens. It's so good. I don't think they could have picked a better 3 people to be the traitors. I want the traitors to win so badly. I think the traitors have worked so hard. I mean, as hard as they can in that situation to be able to like throw people off. Yeah, so I barely even got any reading done at work today because I was so distracted and stressed and I was just on my phone. So I am hoping to get to the 2/5 mark, and I will check in with you at the halfway point if I can, because the halfway point I might already be on vacation. I will check in with you before the end of the book. Let's say that. So I am too lazy to get Catabasis, but I am now just under the halfway mark and we are taking off tomorrow. So this is probably my last check-in before I go on the plane. We're really worried about it because, or at least I am. They are starting to cancel flights of the 40 biggest airports in the US because of the government shutdown, and we are flying from one of them to another one. So I think something that's been really interesting so far is they have pointed out that every single version of hell in all of these different myths and everything are representative of the cultures of the people that went to hell. So like if you're talking Dante, it's Greek. If you're talking the Egyptian myths, it models Egyptian life. The translation here is that it looks like Cambridge because these two are from Cambridge and their entire lives have been surrounding Cambridge for so long. We're also getting some of Alice's experiences in the past. We're learning a little bit more about Professor Grimes and how he was not a nice man. So much so that as soon as you'd mention to other people that he's your professor, they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for you. And Alice and Peter have gone forward with this knowing that ahead of time because they are so interested in his subject matter. He is very, very well acclaimed. It's sort of acclaim slash notoriety will get them a ticket anywhere they want after they've finally graduated and proved their thesis. Each of them was told to do something that they were extremely uncomfortable with for the professor, how these people have sacrificed a lot to be able to get there, especially like in terms of their morals or their bodily autonomy. We also see that Alice has a lot of resentment for Peter, and honestly that I feel like that's something that you see a lot in fiction, whether it's dark academia or not. A woman who works very, very hard to get where she is, and she has a love interest who is a man who seems to get everything handed to him. Can we kind of retire that love interest? I'm not gonna lie to you. Fiction in general is giving those people too many breaks, but Peter's family is rich and connected in the field and English, and Alice's family is not. She is Chinese, and she is also a woman, and it's in the 80s, and so even her professor, Professor Grimes, said, yeah, you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition that Peter does. So it's really funny that this professor, who is clearly treating his students very badly, also has these like I'm in your corner kind of things to say, and I think that's just like another level of manipulation. It's very savvy, and it's clear that he's been here for a while. Alice has talked about how she has had bad experiences with Peter recently and has alluded to the fact that the two of them used to be on much friendlier terms than they are now, but since several things have happened that have made Alice kind of change her opinion about him, she feels really betrayed and angry. He does not understand why all that is happening, and she also has reason to believe that while they're in hell, he is not to be trusted for separate reasons, and he has figured out that she thinks that. And it's really, really obvious to the reader that Alice is just misreading the situation, which is kind of irksome, tiresome, whatever you will. I don't find it hard to follow, but I would say it's not like the most, I don't know, streamlined or straightforward fantasy that I've ever read, and like it's fucking not trying to be. It's really more of an ideas book than anything, and I think that that is what R.F. Kuang is strong about. She is strong about her ideas, and sometimes her execution of the idea isn't to taste. And I think that this is kind of an example of that for me, where I'm just like, yeah, no, I like everything that you're saying. It's sort of the way that you're saying it that isn't necessarily my favorite thing she's ever written. Could I have identified this as R.F. Kuang if I was blindfolded? I don't know. Probably not. Again, with Babel and Yellowface, like I opened those first couple pages and I'm like, this is going to be a new favorite book of all time. And with this one, I'm just not getting that feeling right now. And I would be really surprised if it turns out to be something I am obsessed with, but I do think that R.F. Kuang is saying so many really good, really important things. She's a star, and I can't wait to watch her entire illustrious career play out, because I think she's just a talent, even if, like, yeah, this isn't my favorite right now. So, okay. Hopefully, the next time I see you, I will be in New York. I am still in New York. It is our last day, and I am most of the way through Catabasis. Honestly, we have spent like not a lot of time in our hotel room. I have not had a lot of time to read, and I'm definitely going to finish it today, no matter what happens. I am not gonna let myself not finish it. I think I have the equivalent of 100 pages left. I am on page 650 of my copy. This book does not have a normal structure, and I think that that's something that definitely would throw people. I'm like trying to investigate why this book has such a low rating, but also like I'm not feeling that strongly about it. I think her messages about how grad school is hell, how it is torturing people, but also how people like lean into the worst of them because of grad school, and how grad school makes you do all these things, and how a lot of people like throw away things about themselves because of grad school. I think that's a good thing. The dynamic between Alice and Peter, and I like the changes that Alice has made about herself over the course of the book. A lot of it is being done through flashback. I don't feel really strongly about them. I feel like the characters more feel like not quite stock characters. They don't feel that flat. They feel more representative of a larger thing rather than real fleshed out characters. But I do appreciate, especially Alice has been a deeply flawed character that we have been able to follow, that like we can point out when like, oh, she's doing something because she has been trained by her professor to be a selfish person, to be a person who will compete with other people rather than work together with people. I guess I have an idea of how this book is going to end. I don't think that anything is going to pull out and surprise me, because I don't think that this book did anything that really took my breath away and did something unexpected given the synopsis. So I'll check in with you when I'm done. Hello, welcome to LaGuardia. It is currently past 5 in the morning. Last night we were supposed to fly out and I was gonna finish my book on the trip, blah, blah, blah. I did end up finishing the book. That's because our flight was delayed and then delayed and then delayed and then canceled. Not super surprisingly, we did book our tickets before the shutdown happened. I was really worried about that happening just with a regular flight, but this sucked and Delta gave us no warning at all. Our flight was supposed to go off at 8 and we had been delayed 3 separate times, and like they even switched which plane was going to be ours. Just didn't cancel the flight ahead of time like they should have, and because it's technically not their fault, they didn't have to pay for us to stay in a hotel, even though they should have had the foresight to cancel ahead of time. And so we're really pissed, and honestly the Delta people did not treat us very well. So because people in our government want to take healthcare away from the people who are the most vulnerable, we're gonna be out like maybe $400 when all is told of all of the costs that have accrued because we had to stay here an extra day. So I'm pissed, but I did finish Catabasis, and the awards are going to be published in a couple hours from now, and so we'll find out together what they are. I think this book is getting a tepid response for a reason. So actually, you know what's really funny? The last time I vlogged you in an airport and the last time that I vlogged an R.F. Kuang book was the same time. It was for Yellowface and I was flying to San Francisco. The strong messaging like is the tenet that you're going off of that like hooks you on the book, right? This isn't a character book, this isn't a plot book, this isn't a world building book, it's an ideas book. And I don't think the ideas went any further than I thought they were going to, and then the other things didn't really push it for me. I wasn't particularly obsessed with any of the characters, which I don't necessarily think that's 100% R.F. Kuang's strong suit, at least in her standalones. I think this is a very good metaphor of comparing grad school to the layers of hell. I think it's showing off a character who is been shaped by this really toxic environment, and we're seeing how that has kind of corrupted her and how she is growing when she is finally having to confront what being in grad school actually is and kind of take off the rose-colored glasses that she has had to have on in order to survive. I just don't think the plotting or the structure of this book felt like it mattered. It felt like a myth in the way that nothing needed to be established before it was introduced. Like, if something needed to happen, you would introduce it like 30 seconds beforehand. And so it doesn't feel like it's well constructed. It feels like it's just put together as we're going along. Maybe you could say that, you know, adds to how chaotic hell feels, but it just doesn't feel like what I think R.F. Kuang is kind of capable of. My arm hurts from holding it up. It was fine. I think the writing style is good. I think this showed an accurate portrayal of depression when you are forced into it from being in such a toxic environment. Right now, like, the max I would give this book is a 4. I don't know if I would go lower, but it's definitely not getting my vote. Now is off to our next book. I literally just watched the employees put it on the shelf. That's so funny. I talked to the people at the store and they were like, oh, you got the new book? I'm like, yes, I had to, day of. They're like, it's been so busy. I'm like, yeah, Tuesdays, right, for books? And then they're like, oh, right, Veterans Day. I told them I was so surprised that you didn't have the book out as like a display or whatever. And they said, we were going to. They sold out too quickly. They literally only have 3 books in the store left. I am very proud of my community that we are selling this book out. It's everyone's favorite vlog setting, the floor. I've done my stat analysis for the books that were nominated. Before we go into the stats, I'm going to talk about the 5 books I got wrong and the 5 books that I missed. So the 5 books that I got wrong: Emily Wilde's Compendium of Fairies and the Amalfi Curse. I got them wrong for the same reason. They were both nominated for another genre. Emily Wilde has only existed since 2023, which is the year that fantasy romance became its own category. So for the last 2 years, it has been a fantasy nominee and not fantasy romance. What I'm assuming from this change is that the publisher or the author or the team behind the book decided for Goodreads, they're like, hey, we want to try to get a different category so that we can try to win. We'll never know. That's just speculation on my part. Amalfi Curse, its first genre is fantasy and its second is historical fiction. So Sarah Penner's previous book was nominated in historical fiction, but its first genre was historical fiction. And if you look at Amelia Hart's previous book, that was also first genre historical fiction and then fantasy. And it was nominated in historical fiction. And this time, both of these books' first genres were fantasy. The Sirens and the Amalfi Curse were absolutely being talked about in tandem. Those 2 books were being pushed to the exact same audience. And I think maybe that was an idea of like, okay, we don't want to double up. Aftertaste was nominated in the debut category, but not in a genre. That makes me feel good about putting it on my list. Among the Burning Flowers and Blackwood's Blue Sky were not nominated at all. Full strikeout for me. The 5 that I did not put on my list. There are 2 books here that I had fully eliminated from contention. King Sorrow, its #1 genre is horror. The list that it was on is the Goodreads preview of Fall 2025's new sci-fi, fantasy, and horror books. Readers' most anticipated books of each month, which does not really specify genre, and the new releases lists. every month that are automatically generated by Goodreads. I wouldn't have put it there, and we'll talk about it again later. Thief of Night I had eliminated because it broke the sequel rule, but now we've had 2 books break the sequel rule. Last year, it made sense that the sequel rule was broken. Again, we'll talk about this book later. It doesn't make sense that the sequel rule was broken here. The Society of Unknowable Objects and Red City, I had not eliminated, but I was not going to pick them. If you gave me a couple extra opportunities, I wouldn't have picked them either. I don't think either of them were doing the numbers. The Incandescent, if I knew that Emily Wilde and Amalfi Curse were the wrong genres, definitely would have put the Incandescent on there. So the other 4 books, I think, don't really have the justification of the numbers. King Sorrow and Red City are the least shelved books on this list, 49 and 50,000, considering that there were 2 books on the list that hadn't even come out yet. And they had Strength of the Few had 128,000 people shelving it, and Brigands and Bread Knives 65,000. Thief of Night had 59,000. What was the other one I got wrong? Incandescent had 62,000. These bottom 4 books, so not the Incandescent, but the other 4 that I got wrong, I do kind of see them as editor picks. But the thing is that all 4 of those authors had been nominated for or even won a Goodreads Choice Award before. So I'm going to run through my stats just in the order that I have them written down here. Of these books, the average rating among them is a 4.146. The average number of ratings that the book has is 28,894 ratings. That's definitely trending high because we had a couple books that have over 100,000 that are really tilting the scales. And the average number of shelves that a book has is 158,000. Last year, I checked out the 3 different categories of my predictions, the books I was sure about, the books that were maybes, and the books that I was unsure about. This year, I had 7 books I was sure about, 7 that were maybes, and 6 that I was unsure about. And this year, I got 1 sure and 1 maybe wrong, and 3 of my unsures wrong, which that is exactly what happened to me last year. Let's look at the average ratings of the books. Anything that is blue or above is a book that is above 4.0, and we have a lot of 4.3 and aboves here, which is good to see. I want to see books that have a really high average rating. One of the books that's in the 4.3 section and one of the books that's in the 4.2 section, those are the 2 books that came out on the day of the awards, and these numbers are as of the day after the awards. I'll talk about it later, but there were a lot of books that came out later in the year. I think those average ratings are going to settle down a little bit compared to this. But if we compare these numbers to previous years, this is the highest percentage of books over 4.3 that we've ever seen, the highest percentage of books over a 4.2 that we've ever seen. And we went back to not having any books that were nominated that were a 3.6 to a 3.7. The lowest rating that we had is, I believe, The Sirens. The Sirens is a 3.73. I was right. When I tell you that I know these stats like the back of my hand because I've looked at them from a million years. Next up, we have the sequel status. So this year, we went back to what our average has been. In 2021, they changed the awards, and in previous years, it had been almost 50% sequels, and then starting in 2021, the max number of sequels that they nominate is 5, and that is sequels or indirect sequels, so companion books. Last year, we only had 4 sequels. There were only 7 books that I think really qualified for it. This year, there were 14 books that I thought qualified for it, and they picked 5. So I do think they actually are having a cap there because there were lots of books that they could have picked. And there's a lot of books that they could have picked over Thief of Night. When we talk about number of ratings, we had 9 books that had over 20,000 ratings, 3 books that had between 10 and 20, 2 between 5 and 10, 4 between 2 and 5, which is a very common sweet spot for books that came out that year, 1 between 1 and 2.5, and 1 under 1K, and that's because Strength of the Few came out day of. We can actually compare this to the breakdown of all of the books. So every single book that was above 20,000 ratings was nominated for the awards. 3 out of the 8 that were between 10 and 20 were nominated. There were 2 out of 12 from 5 to 10. Then we're going to look at the author and if they've been nominated before. So I actually looked at last year, and this is an identical breakdown. I just added another category. Last year and this year, exactly 50% of the books nominated were from people who have been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for fantasy before and not won the award. I'm going to get to a caveat about that in a second. Exactly one of them was by an author who it is not their debut, but they have not been nominated before. Two of them were by debut authors. And then the rest of them were authors that were nominated in other Goodreads Choice Award categories. But this time I actually have a section for people who have won other awards. Couple of caveats. Number one, V.E. Schwab, I put her in nominee, but she has won the YA Fantasy Award before for Gallant. And also, I have been under the impression this whole time the Goodreads Choice Awards start in 2011 because when you go on the Goodreads Choice Awards page, that's what they have. They have 2011 to now. And when I looked up like the first year of the Goodreads Choice Awards, it gave me 2009. I'm like, what? They still have their blog page of what the winners were. It looks like in 2009, it was done through their newsletter. In 2010, there does not seem to be any information online about what it was, but it doesn't exist on the archive. I don't think Goodreads is really counting it as those awards existed, but I did find out Brandon Sanderson technically has won the Goodreads Choice Award for Fantasy before. He wrote Towers of Midnight off of Robert Jordan's notes, and that won the 2010 Goodreads Choice Award for Fantasy. I don't think that really counts. On two counts, it was not his original property, as well as Goodreads doesn't even own that this year happened. So just thought fun stuff that I learned. But if you're curious, the authors that had not been nominated for this award before, Antonia Hodgson is the only one that this was not her debut, and she had not been nominated before. She was a historical crime author before writing The Raven Scholar. Morgan Ryan and Samantha Sotomayor, this is their debut novel. Amal Motar, Stephanie Garber, Emily Tesh, and Marie Lu have all been nominated for other categories before. Two of them for sci-fi, two of them for YA fantasy. And then Joe Hill, Amelia Hart, and Holly Black have all won other categories, but not been nominated in fantasy before. Let's talk about the number of lists that they were on. 7 of the books nominated were on at least 7 of the 18 lists that I pulled from Goodreads. That is out of a total of 9 books that did that. There were 7 books that were on 5 to 6 lists out of a total of 8. There were 5 that were on 3 to 4 lists out of a total of 17. There was 1 that was on 2 or fewer out of 57. And the book that was on 2 or fewer was Thief of Night. Then we have the number, they were in my top 10s. So there was 1 book that was on all 4, and that was The Devils. However, Emily Wilde was also on all 4, but again, different genre, so it's 1 for 1. All 5 of the books that were on 3 of those lists got nominated. All 5 of the books that were on 2 of those lists were nominated. And there were 2 books that were on 1 of those lists. And there were 4 books that, because of their release date, they really couldn't qualify for any of these top 10 lists because they hadn't had the time to be on Goodreads lists yet. We have the number of shelvings. So there is 1 book with over 500,000 shelvings. That's Barrier Bones. There were 2 books over 250,000. That's Catabasis and Win in Truth. There were 7 books that had over 100,000 shelvings. And every single one of the books, 100,000 shelvings and above, was nominated. There were 4 books with 75,000 shelvings or more out of a total of 10. There were 4 that were in between 50 and 75 out of a total of 11. There were 2 that had 50 or under out of a total of 60. One of the last things I want to look at is the month that they were released. April, September, and October were the big ones in the number of fantasy books that Goodreads was talking about being released. And we are seeing that April and October were big months. And that's why there's so many books that like people haven't heard of yet that are on there. It's almost like the awards shouldn't be held in November. It's a marketing ploy so people buy the books for the holidays. If you didn't know that, that's why the Goodreads Choice Awards are held when they are. Including Catabasis, there are 8 books that I have already read. I am currently reading The Strength of the Few, and I will be reading another one of these. There are 4 books where I have read from the author before. There is 1 book that I have read from the series previously, but I'm not caught up on this one, and that's Brigands Bread Knives. And the rest of the books I have not read yet. And also, I just wanted to look at the diversity here because I think particularly the romance genre was being pointed out of how not diverse these sections are. If you look at the YA genres, and this is something that you'll see reflected in the publishing industry, the YA demographic is so much more diverse. I think there's a lot of reasons behind that, but the one that I want to point to is that the publishing industry definitely pushes some authors of color and queer authors to write for younger audiences. I think that's something you see with women writing fantasy and stuff like that. Books that would be shelved as adult fantasy if they didn't have a female author's name on it, you'll see that, and I think it's just infantilizing people. To my knowledge, which could be wrong, I believe that 4 out of the 20 nominees were written by people of color. I don't know these people's personal lives, but there appear to be 2 out queer authors out of the 20. I could be wrong about that. We can always do better. I just think it's something good to look at, especially because I know in the romance section, there are 0 queer romances being represented in the Goodreads Choice Awards. Last thing I'll say in this update is that I have sampled the audiobooks of the remaining books. The 2 books that were totally on my TBR outside the Goodreads Choice Awards that were nominated here. Brigands and Bread Knives, but I'm not going to read it for this video. That and Red City, which again, author I've already read from, but also like I was planning on asking for that book for Christmas. I wanted to get it physically, so I don't want to listen to the audiobook of it. Even though I would like to say it is a full cast audiobook, and also one of my favorite audiobook narrators, I believe, is the main female character. She did Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I listened to all of these books. The only one that I was really turned off by was King Sorrow, which I wasn't going to read anyway because it's way too long for me to get through in the time frame that I want to do this. I felt gross from that sample. I didn't like it. I was most interested in reading The Everlasting, A Resistance of Witches, or The Incandescent. From sampling the audiobooks, I do think I'm interested in A Resistance of Witches. Sounded like a normal audiobook. The Everlasting was kind of written in second person, so it seems like that would be really interesting to listen to. I would like to say Alchemy of Secrets really surprised me. First of all, it's narrated by Sutton Foster of Broadway fame, and she's doing an excellent job. I was really getting along with the writing style. I don't think that this really screamed at me that it was something I was interested in, but I was very intrigued by that. So those are the 3 that I'm thinking about. Place your bets now, which one you think I'm going to try, and I'll get back to you when I have picked them. But now I'm going to read a little bit more of Strength of the Few before I update you on it. I have already started it, and it's very good so far. Editor's note that I have discovered that I have been pronouncing the author's name incorrectly, like this whole time. I first listened to the audiobook of The Will of the Many, which pronounces it Islington. It is what I originally thought, Islington. I'm sorry, man. Hello. I am in my Will of the Many outfit, actually. Total coincidence. But I am here to give you my 1/3 of the way update through Strength of the Few. If I haven't shown you already, Strength of the Few has a reversible dust jacket to match the original copy, and I knew this ahead of time. What I didn't know until like yesterday is that somebody found that on the whole first run, there is a typo on the cover. Only in one place they spelled the hierarchy wrong. Right now, this is going to be very, very hard to talk about without spoilers, and if you have read The Will of the Many, like most of the people who subscribe to me now, you probably know what I'm talking about and why. So I am going to try to be vague about it. Will of the Many, my favorite book of last year. It's a Roman-inspired fantasy. Our main character is Vis. He was a prince whose nation was overtaken by this empire called the Hierarchy. He is trying to survive, but then ends up trying to infiltrate the hierarchy on many different levels. He's trying to do it personally, and then there's 2 different groups who are trying to get information from the hierarchy through him. He's a very clever character. I love him. He's one of my favorite protagonists. Book 1 is possibly the craziest ending to a book I've ever read. Absolutely rewards a reread for you to try to figure out what was going on. And I just created a video that means that 15,000 people have not reread the book because they decided to watch my thing. But I do think it has helped people who weren't going to reread the book continue on. Because of stuff that happened at the end of book 1, this is now a multi-perspective book. In the first book was not. We are now in brand new locations. It has really blown up the world, which I think that's some of the critiques that I saw about The Will of the Many, but it's like there's so much allusion to other stuff that's going on that you can tell that like we're going to be digging into that. And one of the things that we're digging into in this book is will, and how will is used in different ways in different places, which is really interesting. And I definitely think that this book is going to have more people saying that Vis is such an overpowered character, and I could could not care less. I could not possibly care less. I love this. And I think he's a hard worker. He's a clever guy. He's got a privileged upbringing that would make sense for all the stuff happening. And he's had all of these really unique situations in his background that make it so that, yeah, it makes sense that this character is the one who can do all this. And it doesn't feel like plot armor to me that he's doing all this stuff, because everything that he's doing is dangerous. And like, there's so much stuff that happens to him in the first book that is so devastating. He has not come out unscathed, and you can really tell that by stuff that happens at the end of book one. We have been introduced to some new characters, and I am very curious about like where those characters are going. I'm really curious about the new world building. There's some areas that feel like, as you can kind of tell from the cover of this one, there feels like there's an area that is very 100% inspired by Egypt. In the other one, I'm getting the vibe Celtic Gaelic. I'm not clear. And because of all these situations, we're seeing our characters in entirely new lights. And I think it's really interesting to compare the different situations that they're in, and we as the reader know more than the character. I love dramatic irony in a book. I cannot emphasize how much I love dramatic irony. It can be really devastating in a book. The thing that I think this book is going to struggle with, this is a multi-perspective fantasy when the previous book was not. This is the first time that I have read James Islington in print rather than on audio, and I was really appreciating just his vocabulary in this book so much more. He's not pretentious in his language, but he picks a particular word for a reason. If he knows a word that is going to be more specific, that is going to be bigger, he's going to choose it. Austin and I were actually talking about this because he actually got my rehearsal for the Will of the Many video, and I was just going to tell him a little bit about the book, and then I just gave him like the first 8 chapters off the top of my head, and he was like, keep going. And we were supposed to be eating dinner. And I was like, do you want to eat? And he's like, no, keep going, keep going. And he kept saying that for 4 hours. He loved it so much that I gave him my old Audible, and he is listening to The Will of the Many right now. He's never really listened to audiobooks before, but he's liking it. He's got it on like 1.2 speed, and he kept telling me all these things that he was really enjoying. That was one thing that he pointed out, is like he was saying, oh, he's definitely testing his vocabulary with this book, but it doesn't feel like it's pretentious. I felt in The Will of the Many that the beginning of the book, like I wasn't that invested, and the further I got on, the more heavily invested I got. And I'm wondering if that's going to happen with this book here. I do think that the perspective that is closest to what we were doing in book one, that is the perspective that I'm feeling the most caught up in. And the other ones, I feel like I have more questions, and I'm like waiting to see what happens. That's after the first third. I'll come back to you at the 2/3 mark. I finished Act 2 of The Strength of the Few. I've actually gotten a bit into Act 3. I have been gagged. This book has gagged me. I had heard that the ending of this book was crazy, and it kind of feels like starting at the end of Act 2, we are getting some shit. Let me back up. I mentioned before, I feel like this book is going to struggle because of the multi-perspective thing, and I agree with that. As much as I am enjoying this book, it is not quite the level of enjoyment I had for Will of the Many. And I think that it was really nice seeing a epic fantasy book that follows one character and follows them for so long. It doesn't necessarily feel like it gets into the minutia of his life, but it feels so full and lived in because we spend so much time with him over the course of more than 600 pages. And now it's being split. I'm genuinely feeling like a little bit sad that I don't get to see everything that's going on in Vis's life. Like, there are multiple time skips that happen in this, and I said it with the first book, and I'll say it with this book. There's no fat on it. I can think of one chapter in this book that I felt like was fat. There is simply less you can do per place. I'm not feeling the same way I was about the first one, but this is a very different book. But we have had some big things happen that had me like jaw on the floor. I need to talk to somebody about this, and the only people who I know who are reading it aren't there yet. And I'm like, okay. The stakes have been amped up. Danger has been amped up. and what is possible in the world has been opened up a lot more. There are way more possibilities as we get to know the magic better, and I think that's really cool. I've been liking seeing different aspects of this because I think that is a really interesting way to do a character study, and it's something that I have never really seen an author do because he's being really super creative. I think this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but the Egyptian location is my least favorite. I feel like I have the least grasp on it, less like I understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. I love this. I love this so much. Also, there has been a moment so far where I did tear up. Also, I found out that on James Islington's Instagram, go on his Instagram, there's a link in his bio to a short story. It's not really a short story. To me, it 100% reads like a cut chapter that they couldn't really figure out what book to put it in and decided it doesn't really belong in either of them, that takes place like directly in between books 1 and 2. So I'm ready for the end of this book to be crazy. If I'm not held by the throat by the end of this book, I am going to be disappointed, and I'm going to try to be as honest as possible about how I feel about the sequel because it is my most anticipated book of the year, and I don't want that to get in the way of me loving it or me not liking it as much as I like. I have chosen my audiobook and I have listened to a good portion of it, and that is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. The reason I was interested in this book, beyond the cover, because the cover, gorgeous, is because it pitched itself as being genre bending, really testing the limits of the speculative fiction genre. And so I was like, immediately, get on board, absolutely. Because otherwise, this seems a little bit more in the fantasy romance realm than I would have liked. From like the pitch line of the book, our main character is Owen, and he lives in a world that is not our own, but in a World War-ish era. He is a scholar who is obsessed with the story of Una the Everlasting, who is a knight from 1,000 years ago, who fought in crusades and slayed dragons and stuff. It's kind of like if Joan of Arc met King Arthur, but more like maybe Lancelot. He like sees her as this guiding light for him. He sees like a sign from Una that he decides to fight for his country, gets really hurt, has to leave immediately, so he's this failed soldier, and he goes back to trying to be a scholar for her. As the head of the Department of War, she goes to him and is like, hey, I'd actually like you to continue your work. And the thing that I think is really interesting is how much is very clear to me, and hopefully the reader, that this woman is trying to create propaganda to strengthen the nation's nationalism and to like justify more war in the future. This book is getting political in that way, and I really like that. Long story short, this guy is somehow sent back in time to Una's time. And he's like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to write down everything you say. And I'm going to be your scribe. I'm actually going to find out what the real story is. And also, he lets her know that he's from the future and knows her story. Interesting things off the bat. First of all, really good narration of the audiobook. I would highly recommend the audiobook for this. Second, the second person that is being used throughout the story. So whenever Owen is referring to Una, he calls her you. And then also there are inserts that are from a story of her that also use you. Number 3, I really liked how much setup there was before he time traveled. Sometimes books start too quickly. Like, give me a little bit of our main character's regular life. And for this, we get a long backstory. I think that really grounds us in the character, in the stakes in the real world as we are going into the past. One of my favorite things in fantasy is this trope that I don't think is necessarily talked about, but it's so common. And when it's done well, I adore it. And it is the history we know is wrong, that we have been taught something for a specific reason, and we're actually finding out the things underneath that. And this isn't like straight up that, but it is playing with the idea of what a story means. And we've already had this quote from the book that it's a nation is a story we tell ourselves. It definitely has like advanced and gotten a little bit crazier, a little bit less expected than I would have thought from an already like pretty out there book. So I'm really enjoying it. I don't think this is gonna be a 5-star, but this has made me very happy that I tried out this author that I've heard of a lot of times. So I think if you are a fan of fairy tales or history and like books that are addressing that sort of thing, this is absolutely a book that I would recommend so far. Hello. I am now 56% of the way through The Everlasting. I checked in with you last time. I was at 36%, and that was definitely the 1-act mark. we have established the stakes. We are now going to pay off. I'm loving the payoff. I knew that this book was going to be for me because it's time travel. I love time travel in any form, used in any genre. It is a trope that I think has endless emotional depth. Time travel just gets to the heart of who I am as a person and the things that I find thought-provoking and emotional. So pleased with the way that this is going. This is kind of starting out smaller and getting larger and larger as it's going on. And I think that that is just going to, if this doesn't pay off, I'm gonna be so sad. I really love how the narrators are delivering everything, and I think they are getting the emotional stakes behind it. There's also so many little pieces that are reminding me of other things in a good way. Sometimes you read a book and you're like, I've never read anything like this before. And sometimes you read a book and every little thing reminds you of something else that you've enjoyed. Hadestown. Specifically Hadestown, not just Orpheus and Eurydice. Brienne of Tarth really reminds me of Una. Parts of it remind me of Laini Taylor's work, particularly the beginning reminded me of the beginning of Stranger the Dreamer, but the further it's gone on, it's kind of reminded me of some parts of Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. We've got Harrow the Ninth going on, almost Arthurian feeling legend. And then we also have in this present timeline, what reminds me of the writing of the Aeneid that we learned in Latin class. He's writing this new version of the Una myth. If you're unfamiliar, the Aeneid was a Latin epic. It was written by Virgil. So the Iliad and the Odyssey are ancient Greek, and they're these oral traditions, versus the Aeneid was paid for by Octavian/Augustus to justify the rule of his family, of the Julian family. Virgil, who was a very particular writer, was supposed to be creating this myth that would put the Julian family as this prophesized, like, ruler of what would become Rome, the empire without end, Imperium sine fine. I literally just talked about this in my Will of the Many video. And I'm sure there's so many other examples from history and current freaking events. But like, I studied the Aeneid for the equivalent of 2 years of school. I definitely get the longing of Owen for Una. I think I'm having to get a little bit more sold on Una's longing for Owen because he is a little bit more of the reader stand-in character. As the book is progressing, I'm getting more of that, and I'm really getting sold on this idea. I love how there's some blink it and you'll miss it stuff that I've been like, oh man, I guess I haven't been paying attention to this book as much as I thought I was. And then I realized, oh, no, that was a clue for later. Just really, really cool. And yeah, also, last detail I wanted to say is that it turns out that this book is actually based on a short story that Alex E. Harrow wrote a couple of years ago. I think the title of it would kind of give away some of the stuff that is going on in the Everlasting. So I'm not going to say what the title is, but it is from 2022. This idea for the story existed several years ago, and now Alex E. Harrow has taken that story and expanded it to novel length, which I am so happy that she did that because, first of all, I never would have read that other one. But I think there are so many times where I read a novella or a short story and I'm like, dude, you could have expanded upon this and you didn't. And I wish you did because it was so great. Really enjoying it. Oh my God. I'm gonna cry. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I hope this would happen. Austin has decided that Tango's hanging out for this. I have finished the Everlasting, but I am also making dinner. So for the first ever time, I'm going to be making falafel. I guess I didn't realize how big the recipe was because we definitely don't need this much. And I have a little tiny baby food processor. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this feasibly and I'm going to have so much dough left over. I'm going to have to figure out what to do with it. I have a ton of chickpeas. This was originally 2 cups dried. And everyone was like, you can't use canned. So it's a little bit more of an expensive venture than anticipated because it's just so many little things, so many tiny little guys. But I'm trying to do it accurate. And if I can make it myself, I would love that. I don't know how much falafel there is in my area. There's like one halal place, but I think they got shut down. So The Everlasting. I really enjoyed this book. This is going to be really difficult for me to figure out what to vote for in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I don't think I'm going to be voting for The Everlasting, but like I 100%, this is a book I'm going to be recommending a lot. There's so many like 4.5 star fantasies that I've read this year. And like very few 5s. There's always some little qualm I have with it, or it just doesn't feel like a 5-star. This one was a really good one. It's definitely gonna be a 4.25 or a 4.5, which is what I gave so many other books. So I've got parsley, cilantro, which I have the cilantro soap gene. So this stuff actually tastes really bad to me. But we're doing it anyway for authenticity's sake. I don't really know what the best way to go about doing this is. So, The Everlasting. It is a time travel book. Like, that is what it's about. It's about time travel. It's about like multiple timelines. It's about like things getting muddy in that family. And that's like the exact thing that I want from something like this. So like it lived up to my expectations of what I wanted from a book that was pitching itself this way. And it falls into that family. I think if you like something like This Is How You Lose the Time War, just like in the family of that kind of, you know, we're messing with the timeline sort of thing, I think you'll really like this. Here's a discussion I want to have regardless of the quality of the book, right? Why is this not in fantasy romance? It literally has in the little tagline, it's talking about love. She's always been in the fantasy category, so I didn't anticipate that this is going to be fantasy romance, but like the plot of the book is surrounding this romance. There's multiple explicit sex scenes, like not as explicit as you would expect for a fantasy romance book, but like there's detail and it happens multiple times. The things that would make it not be, it's pretty genre bending, I would say. I guess the number one thing that would put me against putting this in fantasy romance is I think that the descriptions of violence are more gory than I would anticipate in a fantasy romance. I just think that this is another instance of it being absolutely arbitrary what these things are, even though the book seems to be very heavily romance. That's not a complaint. I think I liked the romance of the book. As much as I think it is the correct decision for fantasy and fantasy romance to be different categories, because they're usually very different audiences. And also, like, only one type of book was winning because there's so many people who are into fantasy romance that aren't into any of the other fantasy books. Okay, I'm shorting the cilantro, and I'm sorry, Austin. And then we're gonna have dill, which, how much is this? Half an ounce? Really like the language of this book. It's a big feelings book. This is definitely one of those like fate type romances, which is something that I like in a romance. I also liked how political it was. Like, it was not shying away. This synopsis could have happened without the political plot. I thought the villain was really interesting, and like I every year when I do my like best of the year video, I do my favorite villain, and honestly this might be mine. It feels real and is being executed in a way that feels real, and it's like a lot of that is like a metaphor for, you know, victors or people like rewriting history with a political motive. And that's something that's really important right now that's actually going on in the world and has gone on in the world forever and will continue to go on in the world. I would absolutely 100% recommend this book. I was expecting to like it. I wasn't expecting it to like keep up with how I was liking it. A 5 is a 4.5 that I have remembered very well afterwards. And I think that this does feel like a book that would be memorable. There he is! Your best friend! Hello!
You see they got a sign for it?
Oh, they do! And they have that sign. The space is reserved for Derby. There you are. Hello! I have finished The Strength of the Few by James Islington. And I'd be lying to you if I said that I wasn't avoiding making this clip. If I had to describe this book in one word, it would be brutal. The amount of brutality in the first book, like it's a build and everything, and this book is just like go, 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 and it continues to be that way through the rest of the book. It is shocking how we have kind of ramped up that sort of vibe into this book. So much of my reading experience, I don't know how much of it is chalked up to me reading the physical book versus me reading the audiobook of the first book. Me and my coworker were reading this at the same time. He has an Audible subscription and he's like wanting to to lend me the audiobook of Strength of the Few, and I definitely plan to do that. The two of us were only a third of the way into this book, and we both agreed that we needed to reread this book that quickly into it. Will of the Many is a very layered book, but I think on my second read, I got a lot of it. This book, on my first read, I felt lost for a lot of it. I felt like I wasn't necessarily getting everything, and I think that's okay, especially because I'm opening myself up more to rereading. I reread the first book and I had such a good experience, and I would like to have as good of experience with the first book as I did with this one. And I can say that my personal reading experience, like the enjoyment of picking up the book, was not as much with this book as it was the first book, and I think a lot of that could be chalked up to the audiobook. I think the audiobook is fantastic, and unfortunately it is exclusive to Audible. I absolutely hate that Amazon tries to dominate and colonize literally every space in the reading community. They have made it so that authors do not get paid fairly unless they go Audible exclusive with them, and that's why I switched to Libro FM. I do have a friend who can loan me the book, and I don't have a problem with that, and I think it's a little fuck you to Amazon that I'm not paying for it. So this book feels different from Will of the Many because it is so much more full of stuff happening. I feel like the pace is higher. I feel like it's more action focused, as like we've kind of been let loose in a lot of different directions. There's one of the sections that feels like it's a little bit more slow paced than the others. I think a lot of people are going to think that they're not going to like that as much. I liked that perspective. I feel like in the first book, we get to know a lot of our side characters really well, and I'm a person who really doesn't care about side characters normally because I don't think the focus is them. But in the first book, I felt like there was a lot for me to get out of the side characters, even with their smaller interactions, and I felt like I could really describe them very well. And in this book, there's so many side characters and there's so much going on that there's not a lot of time to develop them, and we are mostly focused on main character stuff. I think I struggled with how much that this decided to skip forward in time. There was a good amount of stuff that happened off screen in this book that I wasn't as much of a fan of, specifically in the Roman inspired area. There was a lot of stuff that happened like that, and I was like, okay, no, I want to see that. I feel like I am going to get so much fucking hate for saying that I didn't enjoy this one as much as book one. Do I think this is bad at all? No. I think that James Islington absolutely ramped up the stakes. He has blown up the world. There's so many different possibilities that are going on now. We're seeing Will be used in so many different ways. There's so many different moving pieces that are going on that it is impressive. There were so many moments that I was absolutely shocked, two of which I was surprised that the author went there. The other one was more of a, we the reader knew this was coming, and it was very satisfying to see it happen. Did I enjoy it as much as I enjoyed book one? The answer is no. I really enjoy Vis as a main character. I think that we are seeing more of his flaws play out in this book than in the first book. But I don't know. I think all three of the epic fantasy books that I read for this challenge that I really enjoyed, I think all of them, I started out being like, oh my God, new favorite, blah, blah, blah. And by that midpoint, I started to get this same dread pit in my stomach as the book turned away from things that I liked in the past, or it didn't execute on things as well as I would have liked them to. But all three of them were still books that I really liked. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it's just that near miss of being something that could have been brand new favorite turning into something that I was like, okay, I can see its flaws. And I'm really freaking sick of not having fantasy 5 stars. This keeps happening to me because I read fantasy so much so that I nitpick literally everything. Versus if I pick up a literary fiction for the first time in months, it's going to be a favorite because I'm reading something that's incredibly critically acclaimed and I don't have as much of a lens for it. Does that, I think that makes sense. That I'm going to be most critical of the genre that I read the most. I am actually holding out on what I'm going to rate this book right now because I'd genuinely really like to give it a second read before I rate it. Is that weird? I want to go through this again, and I want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. It is Sunday. Round 1 of the Goodreads Choice Awards is ending in 14 hours. So I have to pick out what my round 1 vote is going to be, and tomorrow I will be able to vote in round 2. And this video is going to come out Saturday, so 6 days from now. All right, the camera might have moved because it fell down. So, oops. So I'm going to give you what both of my votes are going to be because I actually am anticipating that I'm going to vote for two separate books in the two different rounds. Because I have books that I anticipate are not going to make it into round two, I kind of would like to vote for a book to like push it up the rankings of the bottom of round one. If you go for the books that have the highest number of readers right now, the top 10 nominees are in order: Wind and Truth, Bury Our Bones, and then there's a huge jump. Catabasis, and then there's another big jump. The Devils, The Sirens, Watermoon, A Drop of Corruption, The River Has Roots, Alchemy of Secrets, and The Raven Scholar. Those are the top 10. If you go based on the number of shelvings that each book's had, 9 of them are going to stay the same, but the order is going to change, and I'll give you the order. Bury Our Bones, Catabasis, Big Jump, Wind and Truth, Watermoon, The Devils, Alchemy of Secrets, The Sirens, The Strength of the Few, and The River Has Roots. So if you're going just based on top 10 numerically, it looks like those 9 are a lock-in, and it's more of a question if Drop of Corruption or The Strength of the Few are going to get nominated. And that would depend on people who have not read The Strength of the Few yet voting for it because they enjoy The Will of the Many. I do think you have to look at the percentage of how much people have read the book compared to how many people want to read the book. Almost half of the people who have shelved Wind and Truth have already read it. It's 47%. Versus if you look at Bury Our Bones, which has only 1,000 fewer people who have read it, only 22% who want to read the book have read it. That means that there are going to be a significant amount of people who didn't get the chance to read Bury Our Bones yet, who want to read it and are going to vote for it because they enjoy V.E. Schwab. This is the same thing with The Drop of Corruption, where it has 30% read, and that is the second highest percent. But I think that that means that Bury Our Bones has this on lock. In terms of readership, the one to catch it is Wind and Truth. In terms of shelving, the one to catch it is Catabasis, but people aren't liking Catabasis that much. So I had to pick what book I want to vote for. So my least favorite book that I read is Watermoon. That was a flat 3-star for me. I actually didn't really like it that much. The books that are in that 4-ish range, I would say, are Catabasis, The Devils, and A Drop of Corruption. Then the books that I rated probably 4.25 right now, I was saying Bury Our Bones and The Everlasting. And the books that I was giving a 4.5 were Wind and Truth and The Raven Scholar. So those were the two books that I was thinking of voting for prior to this video. The Strength of the Few would be in one of those top two groups. I'm not really sure. I don't know that I can vote for it, considering how much I really enjoyed Raven Scholar and Wind and Truth. I'm a big Stormlight Archives fan. If I want to vote for a book that I don't think is going to make it into the top 10, I think it would be a good choice to vote for The Everlasting, because I really enjoyed that book. I think it exceeded my expectations. I just really enjoyed the way that the relationship between those two builds over the course of the book by way of the speculative element. I think that was really fun. Every other book that I would consider voting for is on that list of books that are going to make it to round 2. There is a chance that The Strength of the Few is not going to make it into round 2. I don't know how many people actually like voting for books that they have not read yet. I'm gonna take some time to think. I'm gonna go vote, and we're gonna vote in round 2. Different day, same location, because this is literally how dark it is now when I get home from work. I am now going to be looking at the finalists, and I actually changed my mind on what I was going to vote for in the first round. So I decided I should pick the book that I think my vote would be most necessary in order for it to be put into round 2. And that is The Raven Scholar. The Raven Scholar was towards the bottom on both of the top 10 lists, so I think it deserves its spot. I think it has a good chance, but last year I was so surprised by what ended up not making it in that I'm like, okay, let me make sure that one gets in. I don't think The Strength of the Few should get in because people haven't read it yet. I just wanted it to get nominated. That's all I cared about. I didn't care about it actually doing well because people haven't read it yet. So let's see. Oh my god, Strength of the Few. Strength of the Few made it. Okay, so right now, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, Wind and Truth, Raven Scholar, Alchemy of Secrets, The Sirens, The Strength of the Few, Watermoon, The Devils, Catabasis, and The River Has Roots. If I am not wrong, that is exactly the top 10 shelved list. I wasn't confident that The Strength of the Few was going to make it in. It only has 8,000 ratings, and the least of the rest of these is over twice that amount. So people are truthfully voting for a book that they have not read yet. So now I have to make the decision of what is my final vote. As it is, I've read 8 of the top 10, so I think I have a pretty good idea. 4 of the 5 books that I would have been cool with voting for are in the top 10, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I think I am going to vote for Wind in Truth. Wind in Truth is the only book that I've read this year that I've sobbed while reading because I love those characters so much. Even though I think it is the worst in the series, in my mind, it is kind of in a class on its own in fantasy. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I had a lot of fun doing all of the hard work for this video. There's so much stuff behind the scenes on my spreadsheet that y'all never even got to see because I made such an abbreviated version of all of my stats and everything for the previous video. This is the most I have ever read of any of the Goodreads awards, and it felt good being so informed, but it felt bad because there were so many books that I actually felt pretty similarly about. So I would love to know how many books in the fantasy category, or if you pay attention to a different category, you can let me know about a different category. How many of the 20 did you predict correctly? How many of them have you now read, and which one are you voting for? I would love to know. As always, if you'd like to find me anywhere on the internet, you can find me at the links in the description. If you have not joined us already, my readathon freezeathon is starting in December. You are allowed to join us late. Come along with us. It's a competitive team-based readathon. It's very fun, very welcoming community over on the Discord. And if you would like to see more videos from me, you can subscribe. I would absolutely love to have you around. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.